Hey, we just watched In the Heights,
And we have 96,000 things to discuss.
so stay tuned.
Wepa!
Hey, welcome back to Nerd News Today. I'm Matthew,
I'm Andrea.
and today we are taking a look at a movie that just left HBO Max, and we're a little late to the party.
I believe it goes a little something like... For those of you who don't know, it's In the Heights!
That's right, this is a movie that I know you are really into, from a show that you are super duper into.
Yes.
I'm not as familiar with the show as you are, but I know some Lin-Manuel stuff, and we both watch movie musicals and theater musicals as well. If you guys watch the channel, you'll know that we cover these things here and there.
We're theater nerds.
At least mostly she is.
Okay, fine. You're a secret theater nerd.
We have a lot of thoughts about In the Heights, but before we get to that, I want to tell you guys about the Coldest Water. These are insulated water bottles that are amazing. We got them from thecoldestwater.com. They come in a variety of sizes, a variety of colors. Really handy, especially now that the pandemic is coming towards an end, hopefully. Things are opening up. They're great for gym rats, great for hiking, great for bicycling, or great just to have at conventions or wherever else you're going to go.
And we're having a giveaway. You'll be able to find out more information down below in the description. It'll also include links to thecoldestwater.com so you can learn a little bit more about them and maybe purchase a bottle yourself if you want.
So shout out to thecoldestwater.com. And just because we're going to be discussing a lot of cultural things today, I think we need to make the point of saying that, yeah, I'm just a white dude, but I'm a New Yorker at least.
And I'm a New Yorker who's also Puerto Rican.
So we're coming at it from at least one half of a little bit more authentic experience versus mine, which is just the New Yorker, but someone who has been exposed to a lot of things that are themes that are of this movie.
Yeah, and I've been in a lot of forums, speaking to people, listening to what they have to say, trying to understand the different perspectives that everyone has regarding the movie, and letting it, both go inform my opinion and also help me figure out more of my opinion.
Because with a show like In the Heights, it's kind of important that we do bring up this cultural part here, because that's a big part of the film.
Yeah.
So let's jump into In the Heights now, and if you guys haven't seen the movie yet, there will be spoilers aplenty in this one.
It'll be spoilers for the movie as well as the musical.
Now, unfortunately, at this moment, HBO has taken off In the Heights from their Max service, but I'm sure it'll be back on both the service as well as the TV channels at some point.
And for those of you who are willing to go into movie theaters, it is still playing. For how much longer, I'm not sure, but it is still, you can still see it.
So we're not going to talk too much about the critical reception of this movie, but I know it didn't do too well opening weekend. That's because, again, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and it's kind of a niche thing being a movie musical in a time where joyous things like this are maybe not welcome still.
And also, there were some other issues that came up that we'll discuss. Overall, while people weren't seeing it as much as everyone had hoped, I would say that it's a solid movie for what it is. But my initial thought would be it's solid for what they were trying to do. Now, do we have other thoughts? Absolutely, but since I'm more familiar with it, I'm going to ask you first. What was your initial reaction to it?
Well, basically, I know that you like this movie a whole lot more than I did because I didn't really like it. And, we should add again, just to be on the record of everything here, that Andrea has seen both the movie and the show in theater. I've never seen the show. I've heard the soundtrack.
And I've subjected Matthew to the soundtrack multiple times.
So I'm looking at this completely from the perspective of being a movie. I did, after I saw the movie, read the synopsis of the show, so I got a better idea of what went on in it. But you've seen both, so you're looking at it from more of a theatrical fan perspective. Yeah. So we're kind of the best of both worlds here. I've got my background in film and production as well. So, we both have different thoughts about it. But for me, I didn't like it. And, man, I got a lot of reasons why I didn't like it. You've got a lot of reasons why you did. So this is going to be a fun counterpoint here and there, aren't we?
Yes. But I'd actually like it if you could kick it off because, well, like I said, as we've established, I'm familiar with it, so I'm coming at it from the perspective of they would have had to have done a lot of bad in order for me not to like it.
Yeah.
And so, while I definitely have critiques, and I think that and I have opinions. Believe me, I have opinions. But overall, I liked it. So I kind of would rather you kick it off on this because you're coming at it strictly as the noob.
Yeah, so just as being a movie itself, I found it long, kind of tedious, kind of boring at parts. Some choices they did just didn't make sense to me. I never felt invested in most of the storylines. There were a lot of storylines. That's never a bad thing. It's just how they made them work. And for me, just some of the elements didn't come together to make it a good watchable movie, especially with a runtime of 2.5 hours. How was this 2.5 hours? Like, I get it, one thing in the theater, yeah, but you're in a movie, and I just, there's a whole lot of points to it. I mean, I didn't hate it. Let's just put it that way. If I was going to give it a rating, I'd probably give it closer to like a 4 out of 10, maybe. Yeah, there's definitely things I'd rather watch than that. And I should add, I also did rewatch parts of it for this review just because I didn't want to be basing this purely off first impressions. I went back to double check things. And it was a good thing I did because I learned a few more things that I also didn't like and add to my argument about why I don't like it as much. So, yeah, I'm kind of on one side of it, and that side is meh. You're on yay, aren't you?
I'm on. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You're a little bit higher than me.
I'm definitely higher than you.
I think you're much higher than my opinion.
No, I'm definitely much higher. I would give it probably a 7 or an 8. I'd probably give it a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. And because, for starters, so the screenplay was written by the original book writer. And so that lends a little bit of authenticity to the screenplay. You know, she worked really, really hard to keep as much of the integrity of the musical intact. And I think for the most part, that was there. However, the movie falls apart in many places, and a lot of those are the places where they had to change the script. Like, you can see a lot of the issues there. So, automatically, yes, I definitely like it more. I didn't find it too long necessarily, but I did find that some of the emotional resonance that you get in the musical on, you know, on stage, that's missing from the movie. And that hurt.
I can definitely agree with that because, yeah, I mean, that kind of just brings us to the first point that I have about it. And that's, I never felt invested in anybody's story other than Abuela Claudia, and even her only because she's a nice old lady, and that's just like easy sympathy points. That's really what it was. You know, in terms of like the story between Usnavi and Vanessa, I never saw at one point or got why they were into each other. I understood he's into her, okay, whatever. Suddenly she's into him for no explanation at any point, and then their only interaction outside of like the bodega visits is the dance club number where they're, you know, she's off dancing with other dudes, he's doing his thing being grumpy pants. And there was just nothing ever. There's no chemistry between either of those characters. Same thing with Benny and with Nina. They had more chemistry, but not much either. I never felt anything beyond them being friends. You know, like there's that one scene they had where they were in the basketball court area, and that was like the most fleshed out anybody really had. I felt actually Nina was probably the most fleshed out of all the characters. But yeah, I never felt any romance or any kind of connection between any of those love stories.
Ooh, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to break this down. So...
It's very easy. You just tell me, I'm right, you're wrong, shut up.
No. Your opinions are fair. Like, I do think your opinions are very fair and valid in all of this. With Benny and Vanessa... that would be a new one. Sorry, with Usnavi and Vanessa, the whole thing in the musical is that there was always the bodega flirtation. There was always that kind of thing, you know... Usnavi's the one who's always drooling over her, and she likes him. She likes the attention. You know, it's like because everyone's grown up in the, you know, in the barrio together, they all kind of know each other to some extent, you know, or at least that's the vibe I got. Vanessa does like Usnavi. She just doesn't want to admit that she likes him, in part because she wants to get out of Washington Heights. So that's part of where that was coming from. And then when you have the club scene, she's all like, "You sure you don't? I thought this was a date. Now, are you sure you don't want to? You know, you want me to dance with another guy?" And that's when it just kind of falls apart. And in the movie in particular, Usnavi is a total jerk. He is a jerk in the dance scene. Like, I thought he was endearing and cute and charming, where he's all like, you know, "Oh, I'm spilling stuff on myself. Oh, Vanessa's all close to me. What?" You know, like those moments, and that little conversation they had at Abuela Claudia's, their apartment, his apartment, where they're all like, "Oh, you have a date. I have a date. We have a date." You know, that I felt was true to the awkwardness of the character, and I thought it was cute and charming, and I felt like there was a little bit of chemistry. And then you get to the club, and Usnavi's just a total D-bag. And it's just like, I get that you're nervous, but why are you ruining this? You know, and you don't get that as much in the musical because there are other story elements happening that are not happening in the movie. That goes in part to Benny and Nina. Their entire story is rewritten. And this is one of the most painful parts of the storyline in the movie versus the musical. This is the one place where it's just like, damn, I get that they cut it because they probably had to cut it for time, because that we would have had a 3-hour movie if they hadn't.
Oh, please, no.
But it hurt to lose because it was just such a good storyline. Part of why Benny, it has to be a black character is because Kevin Rosario is actually kind of bigoted.
Oh, that was completely cut from the movie.
Yeah, that was completely cut from the movie. In the musical, one, Nina's mom is still alive, and she helps kind of drive a lot of what's going on, this storyline. And the whole thing is, Benny is totally crushing on his boss's daughter, but he doesn't really want to make a move. And then Nina comes back, and he's all like, damn, girl, you fine. You know, like, he's just like, he's totally into her. And she admits finally that she's into him. And so they're kind of playing this, yeah, we're kind of into each other, we're kind of not, there's a push and pull. Whereas in the movie, it's like, oh, we used to be together and we broke up, but your dad's totally cool with me. And that's not what happens.
And also, now let's get back together, why not?
Exactly. It's like, yeah, I still really care about you. And it's like, oh, okay, but...
Even though they never really show it, except for one dance number that we'll get to later.
Yeah. And the problem is we lost Kevin Rosario's entire emotional point for being, which also brokenhearted because, one, I didn't know Jimmy Smits was such a good singer, and I'm really annoyed that we didn't get to see more of it. But he has this, Kevin Rosario has a whole song about how he doesn't want to feel useless.
Oh, that was cut, I guess.
Yeah, and there were a couple of moments where it would have been perfect. But in terms of the romance and the chemistry, going back to that, Benny gets fired by Kevin because he's interested in Nina. And then at the dance, Usnavi is commiserating with Benny. So that's part of why in the musical, everything that happens with Vanessa, like, there's another part to it.
Seems like it sounds like it works a lot better in the show.
It flows so much better, and so in the movie, Benny's just a jerk.
And that's kind of what I want to get my point to as well. There's so many different points I could talk about with this thing, but compressed storytelling. And for a movie that's 2.5 hours long, how do they do this much compression and still make it be so painful to sit through? Like, at times, it was really dragging, it felt like to me. Like, I had such a hard time keeping interested in it. I did have to stop the movie 2 or 3 times. I needed a break, because it just kept going. And, that's what I mean when I say compressed storytelling. It's like, you're telling me all these things that work in the stage version, and yet they're missing from the movie, which still somehow goes on and on and on. I don't understand. And those are elements that are very important. And, okay, sure, if they want to change some elements for the movie, that's fine. Yeah. But then they're also pulling out things that sound like they're pretty critical to the flow of the film, the flow of the narrative. Yeah. And that's what bugs me.
And speaking of flow, I'm going to give you one other one. Abuela Claudia, since you mentioned that she's even harder to understand, to have like full feelings for. Part of it is they turned her winning the lottery ticket into the climax of the story in the movie. Yeah. And the problem is that's not what happens in the musical. In the stage version, you find out she won it during Carnaval del Barrio. You find out, and it's just like this huge joyous thing, and then it's all about Usnavi leaving. And everyone's just like, oh crap, but it's also Abuela Claudia dying. So it's like there's a bigger emotional impact, and you learn more about Abuela Claudia that way. You learn about all these interesting little things, and you care about her sooner. She plays roles in other songs. There's also a song Nina sings after she dies. And again, I understand why they cut it, but it also talks about Abuela Claudia's impact on her. And so because of how they flipped everything around and how they moved everything, we lost stuff. Also, lyrically, they kind of screwed the pooch. I have to say this because in the actual lyrics of Abuela Claudia's songs, she's talking about feeding the birds. And as much as I like what they did with the train sequence, there are no birds.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that takes me out of it.
We'll talk about the dance numbers for sure. I've got plenty of thoughts about that.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about an actual story change. That's part of why you don't care about her as much.
There's a lot of story changes, and a lot of them didn't feel necessary. And then there's the addition of Sonny's plot, which I know was not in the show, was it?
No, but that's the one addition that I'm actually okay with.
Same here, because it actually did add some drama. In a show that should be very dramatic. This was like the first thing that actually added a little bit more drama, but at the same time, there's also so many different stories going on. Most of the stories are kind of weak. Sonny's had the most intrigue to it, but it kind of wrapped itself up pretty nicely with a bow. I never felt worried about him or any other characters in the show.
Yeah, see, that's just it. With Sonny, it was more... I still worry about him. Like, looking at it, I love that they expanded that storyline. I think it was beautiful. I mean, I discovered just how skinny Mark Anthony was by watching that. I'm just like, damn, man, if you're skinny on that and the camera adds some extra pounds, how skinny are you in real life? But at the end of it, they were, the lawyer was just saying, hey, this might not happen. And so, yeah, part of me did kind of worry for Sonny at that, but at least he's willing to fight, because that's who Sonny is.
I will say on that note, though, jump to the ending of the movie, which I know also was changed pretty dramatically, also because there's a framing device, which we haven't mentioned yet, that tells the entire story. But yeah, the way they did basically time jump at the end of the film, which I know is different from the theater version.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, well, he's probably fine. Meh. I
Okay,
didn't worry,
fair.
The difference being in the show version, it leaves more open because the show doesn't jump to this conclusive ending.
Yeah.
It's more just like, here's what's happening right now. And it's kind of about living in the moment. I kind of feel like that's kind of the takeaway from a lot of this. There's a lot of other parts to it. But for me, a lot of it just, let's live in the moment. And what we have now is what's important right now. Because there is no time jump. It's like, I got a second date with Vanessa. This time around, it's, I got a kid with Vanessa. We got a store called The Little Dream, and it's also a clothing store while being a bodega and also being this tourist destination maybe. And here's some kids that are also friends with her. Yeah, they kind of just rushed that ending, which, oof.
You know what? I will give you that one. I understand they used it as a story device, and I like the idea of it. But I'm also still really annoyed that they dropped the daddy bomb early, like way too early. It was just like, why are you reveal? It's one thing if he's telling
I didn't
the story.
like that either, because it basically cuts off the feet from the framing device very early on, because I liked the mystery of knowing whether or not it was a thing. And I'll also say, like, with that framing device, the minute they showed the green crab, I was like, all right, this is fantasy, because that green crab happened before she said that line.
Oh, I didn't even
Daddy.
pay attention to that.
It was a quick little thing. I mean, I know I always notice quick little things.
You're good at that, yeah.
Yeah, the green crab's like, well, that's a CG crab and has no purpose for any other reason.
Oh, that
That's a
crab,
spoiler.
that crab. Okay, yeah, I know which one you're
Okay,
talking
yeah,
about.
that's like, I'm like, that's gonna be a story spoiler. So now I know this is BS. He's not actually anywhere. He's still in New York, and it's a little.
Yeah, see, I didn't think of
device.
it that way. From the trailers, I was honestly wondering, is like, he's supposed to be in New York, but it looks like he's on the beach, and I'm like, and part of me was wondering, is this like many, many years in the future? Like, I definitely suspected a time jump, but I wasn't sure how the time jump was gonna work. And the truth is, if he was just telling the story about it being in the past, it would have been fine.
I mean, did you like the framing device?
Yes and no. I liked the idea about, because they did have to find a way to blend the fantasy and the reality, because it's a movie musical and there's nothing real about that.
Yeah.
A part of me liked the idea of it, but the execution is where they fell apart. Because seriously, why would you have that little girl you reveal that Usnavi's her daddy?
Yeah, that was a mistake.
That was like, what? Why would you do that?
Definite mistake. 'Cause that's kind of like a moment too where it's like the movie kind of slows to a crawl for a minute because the audience is probably doing a collective gasp, like, "What'd she say? What?" And it's like you want to. There might be some part of the audience that's like, "What? It's such an amazing reveal." The other part's like, "Oh, saw that coming."
Yeah, and I just think it was just like, really?
Didn't need to be there.
Yeah,
Just
that was
simple
the worst timing.
And that kind of sums up my thoughts on a lot of parts of the movies. That a lot of things that needed to be there weren't, and a lot of things that didn't sure were. Because oh man, there's a lot of stuff that should have made it onto the cutting room floor, but just stayed in somehow. So I want to jump into a little bit technical stuff also. By the way, this is something we both agree on. And if you watch this on HBO Max, you probably noticed the audio is god awful. The audio is so terrible in the film. And I think the reason for that is because they basically took the mix for theaters and just said, here you go, HBO Max, and they didn't change it for TV standards or internet standards, because they are different delivery methods. When you're sending something to a theater versus a TV commercial, how you send things is different. So what we had is probably like a 5.1 audio mix, or something even more bigger than that, and they just basically didn't really do much to compress it and fix it, because I had my computer blasting almost all the way to full power for that audio. And what's worse then is the parts that got like really low, because they're the emotional parts, I had to turn it up even louder. And then when I forgot that I had it that loud and I checked something else,
the musical scenes would like literally blow you away because they would just get loud. Which also, just small side note, it totally works with this. I'm a little annoyed that we missed out on Abuela Claudia's giant calor, calor, calor in her song, because on the stage, Olga Meredith, she just like blasts that, she belts that, and it's this big glorious moment. And I'm sorry, if you're gonna blast me with all that audio, if you're gonna hurt my ears anyway, I want that moment in there, you know? I mean, to be fair, it wouldn't have worked as well in the movie, but I'm just saying, if I'm gonna be forced to have my ears hurting, I would have liked that little moment.
And also on technical levels too, I'm an editor, so I'm a bit of an editing nerd and a stickler for certain things. And we were talking about this even beforehand. Like, there's a lot of moments that I'm just like, why are they there? There's a lot of random establishing shots. There's a lot of choices for how the camera is and a lot of the camera weight that I think were unnecessary, and I don't know what the reasoning was for them. One moment in particular I remember standing out to me was this one shot when Usnavi and Abuela are talking on the stoop, and maybe you'll remember this scene because it's fairly early on in the movie. And at one point, the shot, the weight of the two characters is on the third left of the screen, and 2/3 of it is a windowsill. And they only use that shot for one moment, and then they go back to the 2 shot of them just talking. And there's like a wide in there also, so it's basically 4 shots, but there's only one shot there used once, and that's that weird.
Oh, I don't
third
remember
shot.
that one.
It's a weird little stupid thing, I know, but it just bothered me because I'm like, it took me out of the moment, and it's like, are we trying to be artsy now all of a sudden in this movie?
I think there was a bit of that.
There definitely was a bit of artsiness, but it didn't work because it wasn't diegetic to the rest of the film and was used so sparingly that it just takes you out of the moment.
Yeah, no, I get that. I absolutely get that. I know what scene you're talking about, but I don't recall the windowsill shot.
Because it was really quick, and maybe to you that doesn't matter as much because you were probably more focused on the story itself, but I was focused on the visuals, and came out of nowhere. And then something else we were talking about earlier was when Abuela Claudia dies, the montage basically of the death and everything that happens after her death. And I felt, again, I'm talking about the economy now of storytelling, the economy of direction, how that part dragged on so much, and I could have done it bing, bang, pow in cutting down pretty much almost all that scene. Because what happens is basically, Usnavi finds out she's dead. We now have a montage of the apartment, of things happening in the apartment, the EMTs coming into the apartment. Then there's some shots of the outside. Here's a shot of a fence, which I hate. Here's a shot of some buildings, twice. 2 different shots of the same building. We're not doing a Kurosawa here thing. We're just showing 2 shots of a building. Then we cut to Usnavi crying with the framing device.
No, I think he was doing that before. I think they show him crying.
Maybe that's
before,
what it is, but they do go back and forth to it. They do go back and forth to it during that moment. Then there's some narration with that happening, and then they come back to Usnavi and Vanessa outside alone. It's quiet, and that's a new scene. So that whole thing kind of goes on for a bit.
Well, no, they do Alabanza before they do that scene.
Okay, Alabanza comes before that?
Yeah, Alabanza comes before that.
Basically, I think they could have done some time saving regardless of that, regardless of how those things work together. They didn't need the death montage of all the EMTs and all that stuff. They could have just cut right to Usnavi's eyes crying and being watery, and we know what's happened.
See, that's just it. I liked that part, the stuff that happens in the apartment. I think that part was needed. The reason for that is because they were in the middle of a blackout. And I think part of the reasoning behind that was to show that, there's a lot of chaos going on because she's dead, but also there's a blackout going on. So it's like, oh my God, this is extra heightened. But I do agree with you that what happened immediately after that, like you have the tears, you have Usnavi and the tears and all that stuff, and you could have cut right there and gone into the Alabanza scene.
Exactly.
But I also think the reasoning behind why they showed that little bit with the empty, with the buildings and the fence and everything, were to, I think this was the one way that they were trying to show both that the blackout was still happening and that Abuela Claudia's death was something that was going to resonate throughout the entire neighborhood. And is it as successful as they had hoped it to be? I don't necessarily think so, especially given what you're saying.
Especially because it goes right into Alabanza, which tells us the community knows what's happening.
Yeah.
So we don't need any of those things. And it's like, they shot this footage, and damn it, we're going to use it. And that's kind of what happened. And I feel like that is a lot of the parts of this movie. We've got this footage, we're going to use it. And similarly, we're going to talk about, I guess, now some of the dance number stuff as well. This thing was a scene that bothered me. So there's a dance number scene, and we're going to go to 96,000, because that is the best, I think, dance number in the entire film. And I think everybody agrees. I just read an article about it before we did the filming of this video here, and basically it was just about the director and the choreographers just saying how much of a nightmare it was to shoot, and I could definitely feel their pain. Because, by the way, folks, 500 extras, 90 background dancers, plus the crew. Wow. And it was shot in an actual pool in the Bronx.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there's a scene in that where I'm talking about, again, the weird camera shots and the weight of the camera and how the camera is used. Did you notice the contortionist in the dance scene?
I love the contortionists. Yeah, there's like a group of contortionists. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to watch it when I was doing the second watch. That's when I caught it. I didn't catch it the first time around because the weight of the screen was on Sonny. And I was looking at him, and everybody behind him was kind of blurred out also. So I didn't notice the contortionists.
There were like 4 of them.
There was one that was like really going at it. Like he spun his shoulder 180 degrees.
Yeah, because he was the one who was featured in the front.
Yeah.
But they were all, it took me a moment and I had to look and I saw that they were all doing something similar.
But here's the thing. They didn't really show them doing much, I feel like, throughout the entire number. The weight of the camera was on the stars, obviously. But the way they were setting the shots up, yeah. And also the way it was shot, too. It was just like boom, 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 boom. Very quick. I couldn't really look at things too much. And I was trying to think to other musicals too, and a lot of other musicals will like linger on longer shots, especially older movie musicals. They keep it nice and wide because they want you to really appreciate it, and that's also part of being on a big screen. Us watching it on a little screen, it does make a difference, but I felt like with all the dance numbers and even the whole movie in general, the dance numbers aren't super memorable because of how they're shot. And I never really felt a sense of grandeur. I never felt a sense of whimsy, of fantasy, because this movie's all about fantastical elements in it. I had a hard time getting any of those in there because they weren't pushed enough. They weren't pushed in the right ways. They never drew me in.
No, I get what you're saying.
And 96,000 is a great example of that because there's so much going on. Because I just told you how many people were in that number. 90 dancers. And none of it's memorable. None of it stands out to me. Nothing. I missed that contortionist the first time around. And I saw it the second time. I was like, whoa. I had to back it up and watch it again.
No, it's not. They were awesome.
Because I was like, it got completely lost in the scene. Yeah. And so many important elements get lost in those big dance numbers. Even when we jumped to Carnaval de Barrio, same thing. I remember seeing some spoilers, essentially. People saying, look at this old lady dancing and how like amazing.
Oh, the flamenco woman.
The flamenco. Oh. And I was like, where is she? I saw her that one moment. I was like, that's it?
Yeah, that is the only moment.
And I was like, what? We wasted that? It felt like a waste. And there was so much that like there should have been more focused times on just those moments. And instead it's just like spectacle, but fast. Here's a camera there. Here's a camera there. Here's another angle down here. We're playing with so many different angles. We never focus on just one thing. It felt too music video-ish. And that's also what I was talking about with the Bull of Claudia. It's like too fast. Slow down. Let us take things in on our own time.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that one. I think some of this comes from John Chu's, like step-up background.
Yeah, I didn't know about his background beforehand, so when you told me that...
And the LXD and all that other stuff, yeah.
That makes a lot more sense. But I also kind of wish maybe he could have pulled back a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we're talking a movie musical, and it's a different language than, I guess, what we're looking at with Step Up and things like that, which are meant to be more music video style.
I think he was trying to balance the realism of In the Heights, because In the Heights is supposed to be slice of life. It is supposed to be about, real people. Not necessarily people who exist, but, it's showing that these are people, just living their lives, and these are the things that happen in their life. And these are some of the things that they have to deal with. But then you're adding this fantastical element. I mean, like that moment where Vanessa's running and all the fabric is flying from the sky.
Hated that moment.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that moment either. That one felt like really weird and desperate in a way that doesn't feel true to Vanessa's character and also is weird. But I think that's kind of what he was going for. But yeah, in the delivery, the execution did fail. Yeah, there just wasn't enough memorable stuff. You know what, Stan? You know what I remember in 96,000? I remember, I do remember the contortionist, but that's only because, again, I had to go back and look at it.
So you didn't see it the first time?
No,
either,
I saw it briefly, and I was like, what?
Did you know it was going to be in the movie?
No, I did not.
Okay.
But the moment that actually stands out as memorable to me is the fact that they had a little bit of ballet in there.
They did.
And that's literally the one thing that seriously stands out to me, because I was just like, oh, they're showing different dance styles.
Very little moment of it. But yeah, there's lots of little moments. Yeah, that's the thing, they get lost.
Yeah. And, in Carnaval de Barrio, I loved the flamenco dancer. That woman who is actually, if she's the person I'm thinking is, she was the oldest dancer on the set. Like,
yeah, that's the article I saw too.
Yeah.
But I just mean, like, there should have been more of her. Like,
yeah,
she should have been a central attraction. It shouldn't have been everybody else.
Yeah.
Could use less Lin-Manuel in that scene even. Like, let's see more of this woman dancing, because that's a spectacle.
I wanted her dancing so much. Oh my god, she captivated me.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Should have been just shot of her. Forget the main cast. She's a dancer. And that's, with older movie musicals especially, they would do that. The main star would be off somewhere else. Here's the ensemble dancers dancing.
Yeah.
Same thing at 96,000. They always had to make sure the stars were in all the shots, it felt like. There's very few shots where they're not.
Yeah.
And there's dancing. And that's what I want. I want them to be dancing more. I want to see that dancing. I want to appreciate their craft. I don't need to see the A-listers because they already got their paycheck.
Unless the A-listers can actually dance. Because, like, Anthony Ramos, he can dance.
So those contortionists should have had front and center.
No, I agree. I completely agree.
So we didn't need to see, Sonny doing his thing.
Yeah.
Flapping his gums.
No, I liked having... Okay, so with Sonny's part in 96,000, I wanted the focus to be on him, because the point was supposed to be about showing how intense he is. But if you wanted to have the contortionists, they needed their own moment.
There's no reason why they couldn't just be cutting in shots of them dancing and then cut back to Sonny talking and cut back to them dancing.
No,
that would have been okay too.
No, it wouldn't have worked on that one. In that one moment, it wouldn't have worked. They would have had to find a completely new moment for them, for the contortionists. But I agree with you on the fact that they needed their own moment where you're just like, whoa, what is that? You know?
But I will counter my own points by saying I understand the constraints of locations because they were filming, for the most part, in all these scenes on location.
I know.
So they have to work with pretty difficult constraints due to that.
Oh, yeah.
So I will throw some points in, but there are things that, again, I would have done differently, but I'm not the director, so what do I know about that? Just my preference in this case. I know a lot of folks will disagree with me on this point in particular about the dancing and the dance scenes, but yeah, for my money, just not very memorable, and I just wanted more dancing.
No, I agree. I agree with you. And if you don't mind us taking a very quick segue into actual dancing, I do want to take a moment to say that Christopher Scott, who's credited as being the main choreographer, he's a phenomenal choreographer. He's a phenomenal dancer. I adore him. At the same time, I don't know if he was necessarily the right person for this job. One, I would have liked it to have been a Latin choreographer just because, it would have made sense given what the show's about. But also, I don't know if he handled the elements were not as strong as they could be.
Do they just not work as well because it's on screen as
I
opposed
don't
to
know
being
if
in theater?
I don't know, because it wasn't that memorable to me. There were no real defining moments, not just with the dancers, but also with the cast. There are no big dance moments for even the cast.
There's one dance number that's memorable, for the wrong reasons, for me at least, and that would be Benny and Nina's rooftop, or rather,
we'll get to that.
Apartment dancing.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a different...
We're talking VFX next.
Yeah. But no, for the dancing itself, it just wasn't memorable. You know what I remembered most about some of the dancing? I remember looking at it and going, oh my god, look at all these different ages and look at all these different body types. And while there is a massive issue about colorism that we're going to have to maybe touch on just a little bit later, I was noticing that there were all these beautiful shades of, light to dark, brown and black. That's what stood out to me more than the actual dancing. I love that you had all different sizes, shapes, ages, and colors in there. I mean, that made me so happy. But why can't I remember the dancing?
Yeah.
And I should be able to remember at least a few moments.
Now, we've talked a little bit about some of the fantastical elements of In the Heights, and that's going to lead me now to the VFX, the visual effects of the movie, because there were visual effects.
Yes.
And I will say that most movie musicals don't have visual effects. They're practical effects if they do anything. This movie chose to have some VFX, and they were bad. They were cheap. They were bad. That's really the best I can say. You'd mentioned the flags already. I hated the flags. They looked
no, you mean the fabric.
The fabric, yeah, the fabric going through. That looks like PS3 graphics. There was the scene right before 96,000 where they have all the little drawings around them with their hands, like, the lightsaber. And
that whole thing. That was weird.
That was cute, but not good. Basically, all the VFX just really weren't necessary, and they were just, so minimal. And it's probably tough to balance out because you're also trying to balance authenticity and the realism of this type of show.
Yeah.
But then you're choosing to include these fantasy elements, like the framing device, which kind of is right there telling us that it's like that. And I guess the point of it is that it's also meant to be dreamlike because, after all, sueñito. It's all meant to be dreams. Yeah. So there's a lot of those elements in there. Like when I saw the heads in the beauty parlor for No Me Diga, my first thought was Beauty and the Beast, 1930s, the French version.
Well, funny thing is, just on that, I believe there... I'm not 100% sure, but the word is that's an Easter egg in reference to Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
I don't think it is. I'm pretty positive that it's meant to be dreamlike from Beauty and the Beast. Hedwig and the Angry Inch, I think theater fans are just reading too much into that.
I'm not 100% sure because there's Wig in a Box and a few other elements that were in the stage show. That
it could be. There are other stage show references, like we even mentioned the little Hamilton nod that's in the show.
But we'll get to the Easter eggs.
It's not even that important, really. But
yeah, we'll get to Easter eggs in a bit.
Yeah, there's meant to be these dreamlike elements, but they don't feel very dreamlike. And the most dreamlike one that we get is Benny and Nina's dance on the apartment. And I have to tell you, the minute that before that scene started, when they both go on to the fire escape, I looked and I said, "They're on a green screen now." Could you tell right away they're on a green screen?
No, but there is one moment in 96,000 that I think there was a use of a green screen.
I have to go back and check. I don't really.
Usnavi, towards the end when they're all singing together on different counterpoints and everyone's singing, 96,000, and you have everybody just kind of doing their own different lines. Usnavi doesn't look like he was actually there.
That's a possibility. They could have just cut him in, but the apartment dancing, the minute they walked out, I could tell the lighting changed, the camera type changed, the background changed, everything had changed, and it was very noticeable. And then they started dancing, and it looked cheap. I feel bad saying that, because, they're really trying, and they're trying to make this be dreamlike and fantastic.
They were very good dancers.
They were, which I think kind of got lost in how scene was shot also.
Yeah.
I really couldn't feel like I didn't appreciate their dancing because they were really trying to push that VFX, because that was the most VFX heavy shot in the movie. And it didn't work at all for me. And I was so sad by that, because I was like, man, that's like a trailer moment right there.
Yeah.
And it didn't look good. I did not like that.
See, I didn't hate it, but you know what actually took me out, even though it was this really great little funny moment? They're dancing on the side of this apartment building, and you have this family eating dinner.
Yeah.
And there's this little kid who, of course, you have to have that one person who notices the weird dancing couple on the side of the building going right out your window. And this kid's just looking at it and going like, and what bothered me about it, I mean, it's a great moment. That kid's expression was, mwah. Like, that kid, boom, he got it, you know? And that's great, but at the same time, is this dream or is this fantasy?
Well, see, that's exactly...
Reality or I mean, is this real or is this fantasy?
But that's exactly, I think, what they were going for. Because the barrio is magical.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like that didn't work because they, up until then, they had been separating it a little bit more. Like, you got more of that idea.
But were they? And this is what I want to get to also, is there is clearly this kind of division between the dream state and the reality.
Yeah.
And thanks to the framing device of the film, it's already blurred from the onset. So we know that these two things are going to be in conflict with each other. So that actually didn't bother me. I kind of did like that, because that kind of reinforced that point of what's real, what's a dream, or is it all just the same right now? But that's also why I think things weren't pushed enough, because then we get these dreamlike moments like the fabric, like the dancing. Dancing is the most fantastical, next to probably the pool moment, which I think is also, get that many people dancing in a pool. That's pretty fantasy. That's pretty crazy. The wigs dancing in the beauty salon. There's all these little moments, but they're little. And I kind of wish they were bigger.
They should have been absolutely bigger.
And it didn't really take advantage of the movie as the medium, because you could have gone big. I'd say Across the Universe would be a good example of that. Or Moulin Rouge is probably one you would know, where they really took the fantasy elements and made them big.
Yeah.
But again, you're doing a show like In the Heights, and it's very much based in reality. So, I think they chose an interesting idea to go with, a really great concept that they just had a tough time finding a way to balance. And, that's kind of just where it falters a little bit, kind of just stumbles. And that disappointed me. But I appreciate what they were trying to do. Mm-hmm. I wish they just could have found a more effective way to do it.
I'll agree with you on that. There's just so much where it's like, oh, this is really cool idea. And then it falls apart.
Good ideas, execution not quite there.
Yeah. Another quick element that I want to touch on is it's not just story change, it's lyric change. They had to change and adjust a lot of lyrics. Some of which weren't bad. I'm exceptionally grateful that they got rid of the Donald Trump line from 96,000 and replaced it with Tiger Woods. It makes perfect sense. And two, we don't want Trump in anything, and like for real, it does not work given what was going on at the time, given that you have the storyline about the Dreamers. Like you don't want Trump anywhere near this part of the story. At the time it was fine. But they also changed one of the lines, that Obi-Wan Kenobi line. That was not the original line.
Huh, didn't think so. That was a nod to Disney.
It wasn't a nod to Disney. It's just they were trying to be more culturally sensitive, which is fine. But that's not that's
what was
not
the original line?
I got more O's than a phone book in Tokyo.
Ah,
yeah.
That wouldn't have gone over well.
Yeah, but that's what the biggest problem was. They had to make certain changes, and okay, fine. But were they good? And a lot of the times, I kind of felt that they weren't. At the end of Blackout, when Usnavi and Vanessa meet up for that final time before she goes on her own way, because they changed the story, that was actually supposed to be Benny and Nina.
Oh, that's a big difference.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And because they had to change it so drastically, it didn't work. The lyrics themselves just don't work. They don't flow the same way. And they don't flow the same way. You lose the emotional context of it. And that was, again, really frustrating. And again, it comes down to the fact that we lost so many different story elements.
How did we lose this many story elements and keep the movie so damn long? I'm going to still say that throughout the entire review.
I know.
And not to just jump on your stuff either.
No,
I was trying to think of like other movie musicals that made the jump from theater to movie that are long and that are slice of life. And I kept thinking Fiddler, because Fiddler's the easiest option. Why did Fiddler, which is a very long movie, work better for me than this? And it tells a lot of stories also, but I felt more emotionally invested in everybody's story.
Probably because they didn't rush it as much.
That's exactly it. It felt like things that should have gone long were cut short, things that should have, vice versa, which I don't think we talked about even yet, like the dinner party scene.
Oh, yeah.
Where I was like, oh, we're done already. Okay, this is supposed to be a big moment here where Kevin reveals he sold the the place, and all this other stuff's happening around it, and it's just like he just sits down right into it, and we're done.
And again, part of that is because they changed the storyline in the show. That doesn't happen until the very end, because they gotta get Nina out to Stanford, and
Nina had
Stanford.
Nina also had to mention her issue at school, which I was like, oh, that's like
That was a big one. I appreciated them adding that,
it's a
actually.
big thing, but it also felt little.
Yeah, exactly.
It felt very small and not that substantial, and that's
That was that was messed up.
as we're getting closer to the end of this review here. I think the big point I want to make about the film is the concept of show don't tell, and I think this is a great example of a lot of telling and very little showing.
Yeah. I'm gonna agree with that. I do want to make it clear, though, with everything that we're saying, the actors themselves, the actors are all incredible. Like, really, not a bad word. And big shout out to Olga Meredith, because she was the original Abuela Claudia in the musical on
wow.
stage. She is Abuela Claudia. Okay, from what I understand, Lin-Manuel and John Chu had to fight to get her. And damn right they needed to get her. I'm sorry, there is no one I think who could have pulled that off. Like, there are plenty of other great performers, but who would do, Abuela Claudia justice. But no, this role needed to be Olga's. But in terms of the rest of the cast, we had a lot of newbies. We had like the main characters. These are people that aren't as well known, with the exception of Anthony Ramos, because he was in Hamilton, and he's been slowly doing a lot more TV and getting a lot more notice.
But most of them aren't, necessarily considered A-listers, if you will.
Yeah, they're not big names. I'm talking about the main four. Okay, the romantic ones. The casting was great. The problem that I see within it, though, is because the storylines were changed, we lost a lot of emotional impact, and because we lost the Benny being black-ish, storyline being a problem, we ran into a bigger problem with the cast, and that is the cast is predominantly light-skinned Latinos, and that was a huge colorism. Colorism was a huge issue. A lot of people are upset because in Washington Heights, there's a very large Dominican community and a lot of Afro-Latinos.
And this film was pretty pale in some ways in that regard.
It was exceptionally pale. In fact, the only place where you really see color is in the dancing. Like, that's where you get the variety, and that's wonderful, but also it's a problem. And just in terms of a story element, if you're going to have a Black Benny, which you needed to have, but you're going to change the storyline, and Kevin's going to be cool with him, then there was no reason you couldn't have cast someone dark-skinned in any of the other roles. And so that's definitely an issue, a justifiable issue that's, it's a justified issue that came up. And it sucks, though, because you have all these great performers and they're being taken away from, and it's being taken away from them.
Oh, yeah, I agree. The community was not really represented. And we're from New York. If you guys didn't know that, we are New Yorkers.
We are New Yorkers, but also my mom grew up in Washington. Well, my mom grew up right outside of Washington Heights, but she went to school in Washington Heights. And I know for a fact that, there were lots of colors.
You don't need to go that far into Washington Heights to see.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a pretty important thing is the exposure of it, too, because, this movie is going around the nation. And a lot of folks might not realize that there's more than one color to being a Latin person. I didn't know, to be honest, as much as I was in New York, I guess where we are in New York, I had plenty of different colored folks. But one of my best friends I met in college, he was a dark-skinned Dominican. I didn't realize he was Dominican until he told me. I thought he was actually just black.
I've probably had a little bit more of a diverse kind of grouping of friends, but yeah, I have some friends who I'm just like, okay.
I'll even add to that. Most of my friends were actually Asian growing up, and they were all also different colors. There's like a stereotype of what an Asian person looks like, but no, they're from all over, and different parts of Asia have different colors. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal when you're showing a movie like In the Heights to represent the community the way that it is actually authentic, because the movie is meant to be authentic, and it feels authentic. It was shot where it takes place, but they're missing a pretty important part of it.
And just to add on that, I know that this is about Lin-Manuel's personal experience. Like, this is a personal movie for Lin. The whole show, it's personal to Lin-Manuel. It's his lived experiences, it's his lived feelings. He's always gone on record as saying, while he is more of Usnavi, Nina is really the character that he related to. And part of why he wrote In the Heights is because he wasn't seeing his people being represented. Okay, cool. But if you grew up in Washington Heights, you know that there were all these different colors. So what happened there? You might not be in charge of casting, but you definitely have a voice. John Chu has gone on record as saying that he was unaware of colorism issues. So there's a lot of stuff going back there. But again, the cast themselves, well, actually, now that I think of it, one very quick thing, Jimmy Smits and I believe it's Leslie Grace. I believe that was Nina. Whoever played Nina, and I'm so sorry if I mixed the two of you, Leslie and Melissa up. But if I'm remembering correctly, Leslie Grace is actually part Afro-Latino. Like, she's part black. They were actually the two darker people there, and it was just like, wait, that's a little odd when you really think about it. Other than that, I mean, it completely altered the story and it completely did all sorts of other weird things, but the actors themselves were wonderful. Like, really, I don't think there was anyone in the movie that I honestly looked at and was just like, yo, why were you cast?
Yeah, everybody was great. There's really no problem with that. It's just basically everything around them.
Yeah.
That was a little problematic. It had some issues. Like we said at the start of this thing, it's not a terrible movie. It's just, kind of in the middle. If the Music Man was on TCM and HBO was shown In the Heights, I'd be watching The Music Man.
I would probably be going for In the Heights, though, because I love it so much. But one other really fun positive thing is there are a lot of little Easter eggs in the movie. There's a little Hamilton reference in there. There's some familiar faces, like Lin-Manuel's parents pop up at one point. But one of the best Easter eggs that shows up is Doreen Montalvo, I believe is her name. She was one of the original cast members on stage, and unfortunately she passed away before In the Heights came out. But she does actually sing in Breathe, when Nina is singing Breathe. She actually is one of the featured, background people. And it's just a wonderful thing for them to show that. They even show a little in memory of at the end of the movie. And I just thought that was a really wonderful, little Easter egg. And as I was actually going through the IMDb, they managed to get several people who have been on stage to help add for the background vocals. Which again is like, it's a little nod to the theater folk, which, it did help. It's one of those things that helps you forget about some of the flaws in the movie, Overall, it's a flawed movie. It is a deeply flawed movie, but I think what they were trying to do was wonderful. I think there were a lot of great ideas that weren't as well executed as they could be. I think that there were some blind spots that needed to be addressed that I also think kind of impacted how well it did in the box office, because I did see some chatter and people, there were a lot of Afro-Latinos who straight up said, you want us to show up for you, but you're not showing up for us.
I will say on that note, I don't think the box office has anything to do with that.
No, they were saying that they were straight up saying that they weren't going to see the movie because of that.
I understand that, but I don't think that's the main issue. I think, to be honest...
I don't think it is either, but it's part of it.
But I think the bigger issue about the box office, if we really want to go there, is the trailer sucked. That's how I see it. I mean,
I didn't think the trailer
there's
sucked.
Obviously, there's a cultural issue, for sure, that's a huge thing, but the trailer sucked.
I didn't
The
think
trailers
it sucked.
were so bad. I really hated the trailers also. I thought they did...
Really?
I felt they didn't do justice to the film.
I had no problem with the trailers. Made me excited to see it.
I felt like there was no call to action or reason to go see this thing. And when you're doing a movie that, again, is pretty cultural, and we're New Yorkers, we have more of a foot in the race here, more of a leg in the race, whatever the term is. We're New Yorkers. This is our territory, so we're gonna understand it more. But when you're trying to sell this movie to someone out in the Midwest, you're trying to sell this movie to someone down south, there's no reason to see this movie for them. It's a movie about something they don't understand, that they're not really necessarily exposed to as much. I think the trailers didn't really make people excited. I think, and plus we're still in a pandemic, so I don't really think, it's fair to say it was a flop. Realistically either. It didn't do well, but it's a bad time for movies right now. Yeah, what'd you expect?
I will say this, I do wonder if part of the reason why there was more focus on the fantastical elements of the dancing and stuff, aside from the fact that it's, spectacle, and who doesn't love a good spectacle, but I do wonder if maybe the reason why there was some focus on that more than the rest of the realistic stuff is because they were trying to find a way to get to the people in the Midwest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to show that in the trailers especially.
Yeah.
You need to show that and make it look like a spectacle, fun summer movie. And I don't think the trailers, they were fun to look at. I just don't think they sold
the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I could see that.
And that's also because the story's pretty weak.
See, I don't think the story itself is weak, but nope. Let me correct that. Let me correct that. On stage, the story is not weak, but because of the way that they had to alter everything, the story became weaker.
Yeah, like I'll say to my point that yeah, I would probably not watch this in HBO Max if it was on TV again or HBO, whatever channel it would be on. But if I had a chance to see it in a theater, yes, without having known anything really about the show beforehand, I could see it. There is so much untapped potential that probably works so much better on a stage. So yeah, if In the Heights comes back ever to Broadway, I want to see what it's actually like on the stage show.
Yeah, because on stage, it's wonderful on stage. It's absolutely wonderful.
And what you're telling me too,
Yeah.
what's been cut and the story changes,
Yeah, it's a huge
it sounds way stronger too. Like I feel like, while I said this was a 4, I feel like the show is gonna definitely be a minimum of 8 for me. I'm going
Yeah.
biased into it because I liked a lot of elements here that just weren't done well in the movie. The show, everything you told me makes it sound like $1 million.
It really is, and I will. And while I understand why it was cut, because they cut the entire mom. Nina's mom has one of the greatest mom songs ever.
Well, listen, Lin-Manuel loves orphans.
No! Yeah, okay, real quick, because we talked about this. I do hate the fact that Nina got Disney-fied. She got the Disney treatment.
Is she a Disney princess?
Oh, shoot. No, because it's on HBO Max, Disney doesn't have it, so she doesn't count right now. But if Disney acquires it and it shows up on Disney Plus, yes.
She's a Warner Brothers princess.
Yes. But the fact is, she got the Disney treatment, in terms of, oh, her mom is dead. But seriously, if there's anything I can recommend to anyone out there, Nina's mom in the stage musical, has one of the best mom songs ever. Like, you understand every emotion this woman is feeling. It doesn't matter if she's speaking Spanish. Everything coming out of her, if you had a mother, if you have a parent, you know this moment. This is like the most parent thing ever, and that's my recommendation. Watch the movie. The movie's cool. Listen to the soundtrack and then see the differences.
Meanwhile, Alexander Hamilton slides into Nina's DMs and say, "Hey, orphan, you want to talk, girl?"
Oh, God.
So that's our look and our discussion about In the Heights. And yeah, we're a little late to the party because the movie's no longer on HBO Max, but there's going to be other ways to see it, like we talked about. It's still in theaters at this moment. Or just when it comes out, buy it on DVD or rent it. I'm sure it's going to show up again somewhere else.
I actually got to watch it in April online because they were doing special online events to see it. So yeah, they were really pushing this movie hard. They were creating fan events online. I actually had an opportunity to watch it in April. I was happy to have the opportunity. I was grateful for the opportunity. And I think that they're going to continue to try and find ways to make the movie more accessible to everyone. Because while I agree with John Cho and Lynn that the movie really needed to be seen on a big screen, preferably with a big audience, that's not how most people are going to get to see it. So they're going to have to try and find new ways to get it to people. And I think there are going to be more opportunities. So just keep an eye out if you're interested.
I mean, historically, that is the dilemma of all movie musicals, is that they always were intended to be seen on a big screen, like you're seeing a theatrical show. Yeah. But you can't always do that. But I will say this important last point also is, with all the flaws In the Heights has, more importantly, it's going to open up a lot of doors. Mm-hmm. So hopefully Hollywood also recognizes the fact that this movie was put out during the worst possible time to put a movie out and to release something to the public.
Yep.
But they'll consider taking more chances on things like this in the future. Because that's what really it comes down to. It's now showing that this is a thing that is viable and it sells. So, even with all these points, I know I'm probably the minority of folks who didn't like it as much. I've read some reviews here and there after the fact, and for the most part, they're all positive with some similar things we discussed here today as negatives also. But for the most part, it's a step very far in the right direction and a good entry point. So I hope that more things come out of it.
I think more doors will open. I think it's wonderful. Lynn is helping open doors. Lin-Manuel is helping open up doors for a lot of different performers, as also backstage stuff, crew, whatever. He's helping open up doors, and I hope that we continue on this path because, as you can see, there is so much talent. And so, yeah, what more can you ask for, Well, okay, we could ask for a better movie, but still.
Yeah. So, on that note, until next time, that's our review of In the Heights. I'm Matthew.
I'm Andrea.
We'll see you guys here later on Nerd News Day for more movie reviews, toy reviews, and everything else we do here on the channel.
Para siempre.